Right now, somewhere warm, you're reading this without a second thought about staying alive. You'll eat tonight. You'll sleep under a roof that doesn't leak wind. Tomorrow you'll wake up and do it all again, and none of it will register as a victory. For most of our species' existence, that same stretch of months, the ones you barely notice, was a killing season, not a metaphor. An actual repeating filter that decided who got to have descendants and who didn't. And it didn't come at people gently. It came from every direction at once, freezing them, starving them, and burying them in months of darkness long enough to break a mind before it broke a body. So how did anyone make it through, generation after generation, with nothing but bone, hide, and fire? That's what we're unpacking. Start with the most obvious killer, cold itself. Humans are, biologically speaking, a warm climate animal wearing the wrong coat. We evolved under the African sun, and it shows. No fur worth mentioning, no fat layer built for Arctic wind. Drop a naked human into a freezing night and hypothermia isn't a distant risk. It's hours away. Hands stop working. Thinking gets sluggish. Past a certain point, the body simply stops trying. By the numbers, we should never have made it out of the tropics. And yet early humans didn't just survive the cold. They walked straight toward it, into Ice Age Europe, into the brutal open plains of Siberia, into places where a single bad night could be the last one. Fire helped, obviously. But fire has a weakness nobody likes to admit. It only warms the side of you facing it, and it stays put while you don't. The second you step away to hunt, gather, or just move, the cold is right back. What people actually needed was something that traveled with them, warmth they could wear. And that's where the real breakthrough happened. And it's not the one most people picture. For a long time, clothing meant draping a skin over your shoulders and hoping for the best. It's better than nothing, technically. But a draped hide leaves gaps everywhere. Under the arms, down the sides, anywhere the wind can find an opening. In a mild autumn, that might be survivable. In a true Ice Age winter, a gap is a death sentence. The leap that changed everything was tailoring, cutting hide into pieces and stitching them into shapes that actually matched the human body. Sleeves, sealed seams, a garment that trapped a pocket of warm air against the skin no matter how much you moved. That's the difference between wearing a blanket and wearing armor against the cold. But tailoring requires a tool most people never think about. A needle with an eye. Carving one meant grinding a splinter of bone down to a fine point, then boring a hole through it small enough not to weaken the shaft but wide enough to thread. Archaeologists have recovered bone needles over 40,000 years old. Deliberate, precise objects, not lucky accidents. Thread came from sinew, the tough fiber connecting muscle to bone, dried and pulled into cords strong enough to hold a seam together through years of wear. Without that needle, there's no fitted clothing. Without fitted clothing, there's no human population surviving a Siberian winter. It's one of the smallest tools our ancestors ever made, and arguably one of the most important. Clothing solves the cold while you're moving. It does nothing for the night. And night is where the second threat waits. The obvious shelter is a cave, solid, windproof, holding a steady temperature no matter what's happening outside. But good caves are rare, and a rare resource in a survival situation gets fought over. Most groups couldn't count on finding one, so they built. And in places without timber or stone, they built with what was actually available. At Mezherik, in what's now Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered dome-shaped dwellings roughly 15,000 years old, constructed almost entirely from mammoth bone, jaws stacked like tiles, tusks arched over doorways, the remains of dozens of animals engineered into a structure that could hold against a howling winter. This wasn't improvisation, it was architecture. Once you have walls, the real work starts, sealing them. Bone doesn't fit together seamlessly. Every joint is a gap, and every gap is an invitation for wind. So people layered hides across the interior, packed turf against the exterior, and in some cases piled snow against the walls on purpose, since packed snow traps air and air holds heat far better than you'd expect. Bit by bit, the wind ran out of places to get in. Even the floors got attention. At a site in South Africa, researchers found bedding made from carefully layered grass and ash dating back roughly 77,000 years, built specifically to stay insulated and pest-free. People were engineering comfort before our species had even left the continent. But a sealed shelter creates its own trap. Fire needs constant fuel, which means someone has to keep stepping back out into the cold to gather more. And that means you can't wander far from your stores. Which leads straight into the deadliest threat of the four: hunger. Here's what modern life has erased completely. In winter, the land stops feeding you. Plants die back. Ground freezes too hard to dig. Animals scatter, hide, or starve themselves thin. For a hunter-gatherer, winter didn't just mean cold. It meant the entire food supply shutting off for months at a time. Survival became a math problem. Gather enough in warmer months to cover a season where almost nothing new arrives. The answer was preservation, and ancient people got remarkably good at it. Drying meat into thin strips pulled the moisture out, and without moisture, bacteria can't take hold. Dried meat could last for months, especially with a little smoke added on top. Frozen ground became a natural freezer. Dig down into permafrost, pack it with fresh kill, and the same cold trying to kill you would instead keep your food edible for a shockingly long stretch. And the most valuable food of all wasn't meat, it was fat. Burning huge amounts of energy just to stay warm meant lean meat alone wasn't enough calories. Rendered fat, combined with dried meat into a dense ration, packed enormous energy into something small enough to carry. In a season where every calorie mattered, fat wasn't a luxury. It was the margin between a group that saw spring and one that didn't. So now imagine you're warm, sheltered, and fed. 3 threats down. There's a 4th left, and it's the one people rarely think about, because it doesn't attack the body at all. It attacks the mind, the darkness. The further north you go, the shorter the days get and the longer the nights stretch. Sometimes 15, 16 hours of cold and black with almost nothing to do. No traveling, no hunting, just the same small group of people, the same fire, night after night after night. That kind of confinement can wear a person down in ways cold and hunger never could. But ancient people didn't just endure those hours, they filled them. Every task that didn't need daylight got done by firelight. Repairing tools, sharpening spear points, mending torn hides, twisting fiber into rope. The long night became workshop time, readying everything a group would need the moment the weather finally broke. And it became something else too, the space where knowledge passed down, where elders talked and the young listened, where the same stories got retold until they became memory itself. A 2014 study by anthropologist Polly Wiesner, examining conversation among the Juhansi of the Kalahari, found that after dark, talk shifted heavily away from practical matters and toward stories, song, and shared meaning. Firelight seemed to change what people were willing to say out loud. In many ways, the long winter night is where a large share of human culture was first built. Stir back and look at the whole shape of it. The cold forced the invention of tailored clothing. The scarcity of shelter forced real architecture. The seasonal hunger forced preservation and planning. And the long dark nights forced the birth of culture itself. Story, knowledge, connection. Winter didn't just fail to erase our species. It built us. Nearly every technology that let humans spread into every corner of the planet was forged under exactly this pressure. So here's the full picture. 4 weapons, 4 answers. The cold met with fire and fitted clothing sewn by hand with a bone needle. The lack of shelter met with architecture built from whatever the land provided, even the bones of mammoths. The hunger met with drying, freezing, and rendering food into stores that could carry a group for months. And the darkness met by turning the longest nights into the classroom where human knowledge itself took root. None of it was guaranteed. Winter tested people every single year, and not everyone passed. Survival was earned season after season through preparation and stubbornness and a needle small enough to thread. And now you flip a switch and the cold disappears. You'll never feel the specific dread of the first snowfall, wondering if you stored enough to see spring. Not because winter got softer. Because 100,000 years of people freezing, starving, and huddling together in the dark slowly figured out how to beat it, one invention at a time, so you never would have to.